Hello, welcome back to Non-synchronous online course. The content of this module will be helpful to you in understanding how organizations and companies' role is essential in preventing the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. If all organizations and companies follow biosecurity best practices while dealing with biosecurity sensitive biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, we can significantly reduce biosecurity risks. This module will focus on role of organizations and companies in preventing the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. Let's get it started. Through this module, you will learn how the role of organizations and biotech companies is important in preventing the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. While talking about the roles of organizations and companies, I will touch upon countering proliferation, importance of know your customer and due diligence, implementation of know your customer and due diligence program, customer acceptance policy, the ways to gather customer information, what could be logistics operator acceptance criteria, ways of customer verification, some obvious and not so obvious issues, then monitoring and implementation of the internal training programs, what type of KYC considerations are important during collaborations, and finally, a little bit about recognizing potential issues. In biological supply chains, the role of logistics operators and biological industry is extremely important to protect unlawful proliferation of biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. In the biological supply chains, the role of the organizations and companies is crucial in preventing the proliferation of biological and chemical items which could be misused. At the same time, we have to make sure that procedures and control measures are not hindering the research, development, and commercialization activities of researchers and stakeholders. Organizations and companies should take proactive measures in preventing intentional misuse of the tools of biology and chemistry in line with the country-specific regulations. In general, every country has essential elements of regulatory mechanism in line with the international agreements, conventions, and regulations for biosecurity. For each organization and company, the implementation of the Know Your Customer and due diligence program is vital. In fact, for biosecurity reasons, it is one role of organizations and companies to have a reliable program on know your customer and due diligence. KYC and DD, know your customer and due diligence is a crucial component to each organization and company that handles biosecurity sensitive biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. As a part of KYC and DD, organizations and companies must verify the identity of each customer to confirm the legitimacy of their intended purchase of biological materials or equipment. In order to prevent the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, we also need to perform customer monitoring if necessary. From biosecurity perspective, monitoring of customer will help in understanding the potential risks and to recognize red flags. I want to reiterate that for biosecurity, we need to have a forward thinking. As a part of robust KYC or DD program implementation, organizations and companies must screen all customers regardless of their purchasing power or the transaction value of their purchase. Organizations and companies must develop customer acceptance policy and criteria. If you have it, think that how you can refine that. It is always helpful if you gather data during customer service phone calls or online purchases. We don't want to become a part of biosecurity breach. Hence, it's always better to verify customer identification before processing the order for biological materials or equipment. Monitoring on a regular basis is always helpful to make sure that staff is competent and skillful. Internal trainings may be required time to time. In our organizations and companies, we need to outline the requirements that customers need to fulfill before admission. In addition, we also need to outline risks that certain customers may pose and define organizations or companies' limitations, if any. In order to protect biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, we need to have a more rigorous due diligence process if we encounter high-risk customers. Organizations' policy should clearly state the controls for the process. There should be provisions to establish an internal escalation process. Organizations and companies' policy must identify documentation process. The existing customers, those are vetted or approved previously, and if their essential information is already there in our or your system, then that type of customers can be accepted without delay. If customer is new, then quick web search can be done to confirm the client's information. If it's not a restricted entity, or if it's not an entity located in a restricted country, or shipment is not going to restricted country, and items for purchase don't correspond to ECCN or dual use list, then these types of customers can be accepted without delay. However, longer review may be needed if new customer's name is very similar to a restricted entity, or if customer's address is same or similar to address of a restricted entity. In case if new customers shipment is destined to a restricted country and purchased requested item is an ECCN suggesting it's a dual use, then digging deeper is needed to make sure that you are not putting your organization or company in difficult situation. To gather customer information quickly, checking their web address, physical location, and shipping destination could provide some clues about the genuineness. Checking whether organization is a commercial entity for profit, or it's an academic institution, or a federal non-profit organization. So it can provide some hints about the customer. In which type of activities that entity is involved. I mean, whether they are doing a research or some pharmaceutical production or chemical production, equipment manufacturing, diagnostic testing will also help in decision making. Gathering information about whether they are working in genetics, molecular biology, microbiology, pharmaceuticals, or in some other areas could be useful. In addition, what is the primary source of customers' funding will also give some ideas about the customer's genuineness in purchasing biological materials or equipment. Like customer acceptance criteria, organizations and companies need to have logistics operator acceptance criteria. The operators, those are previously vetted, are approved, and if their information is already in your system, operator can be accepted. However, if operator is new, then due diligence is essential. It ensures that we are not accepting an operator who is a restricted entity or located in a restricted country. Operator is not sending shipment to restricted country and have a robust end-to-end handling or chain of custody management to protect biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. Operators should also have know your customer and due diligence program in place. While dealing with a new operator or service provider, if you find their name is very similar to a restricted entity or have same or similar address as a restricted entity, their shipments go through a restricted country, or have a history of significant loss or theft, and if they do not have know your customer and due diligence program in place, then you need to gather more information before accepting that operator or service provider. Question is, what type of criteria you can use to accept logistic operator or service provider? As an organization or company, before accepting any logistic operator or service provider, you can verify their web address and physical location. Gather information about materials routinely transported by operator, their end-to-end handling and chain of custody practices. In addition, information about their transshipment practices and whether they have know your customer and due diligence program in place. Make sure that your organization or company is protected. Using these types of acceptance criteria is important from biosecurity perspective. Remember that verification of customer or logistic operator or service provider must be done before entering into a working relationship. Please note that there are many online software subscription tools available to make your job easier. Some examples are highlighted here on the slide. To protect your organization and company, compliance is very important. As far as verification of customer and logistics operator or service provider is concerned, to avoid the troubles and penalties of non-compliance, we must screen customer and logistic operators or service providers. Screening can be done using national list of denied entities or persons in your country. Screening can be done using Commerce Department's list of denied entities and persons. If you are involved in international operations, you need to screen your customers and logistic operators or service providers to ensure that you are not violating any international or regional norms. Have a look at the list of control items and technology from Australia Group, as well as Wassenaar Agreement. If you are exporting biological materials or equipment, you also need to consider the export administration regulations administered by the US Commerce Department and other regulations. If applicable, furthermore, it is essential to ensure that your customer or logistic operator have a know your customer and due diligence program in place. While screening customer and logistic operator for the facts verification, you can also consider the scientific background of top management of customer, but it's not compulsory. Similarly, you can also consider the purchase and nature of the customer's work. It is just to ensure that there is an alignment between what is purchased and the nature of their business. Please note that if you are using automated screening tools, they may not include all these factors, including customers' participation in certain tenders, competition, or contract competitions, or affiliations to sell companies or sanctioned projects. For monitoring purpose, to make organizations and company job easy, there are many automated systems available which are fast and user-friendly. However, you can develop a baseline of normal customer activity and when you need to re-perform due diligence or its frequency. You can consider need to involve human interactions for verification purpose, or it's not needed. You can also decide whether, whenever needed, you can always approach your federal agencies or departments representatives to get their input. They can help you. Your proactive actions can serve as a solid, robust effort to validate partners. Definitely, it will help in reducing biosecurity risks of your organization or company. For organizations and companies, it is important to make sure that all their staff are on the same page. Time to time, training may be required to make sure that your staff is competent enough. Organizations and companies' staff should know, why do we do this? How do we do this? What is not normal? When and how to escalate? And what will happen, or what are the consequences if we don't escalate? For organizations and companies, collaboration is very important. However, while doing collaboration or performing collaborative activities, we should not ignore the biosecurity risks. Therefore, it is always better to get feedback from all relevant stakeholders. For instance, a research administrator will have unique perspective as he or she oversees all stages of the collaboration process. To protect the biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, you can ask basic questions such as, what are the items or technologies to be used? Where are items or technologies going? Who will access the items or technologies? and what is the end use or application. Remember, export control requirements apply to electronic and verbal technical data transfers. Some of you may be practicing it. However, from biosecurity perspective, know your customer considerations are essential during academic and commercial collaborations. At the proposal stage, you may consider, are there any publication restrictions from sponsor? Do you need to do shipping of equipment outside your country? Do you need to purchase any equipment? Are you going to use proprietary or sensitive information? Is there encryption or use of encrypted software in all? What is the export control language in the request for proposals? Is there any technology or dual use equipment in all? So these kinds of questions you can ask at proposal stage. In addition, you also need to take into consideration other factors, such as finding the answers to questions like, is there any reference to Department of Defense or other high-risk sponsors? Are there any references to prohibited countries? Is the sponsor from your or a foreign country? Do research activities require travel to another country? Is there any clear military component to the research? Are there any references to classified information? And does your proposal, does your proposed collaborative research involve technology with strong potential dual-use applications? If everything is fine at the proposal stage, then during the contract stage, you need to consider additional factors to ensure that your decision is based on robust due diligence. You may consider finding the answers to questions such as, are there any restrictions to publishing your research findings? Are there any restrictions on foreign nationals who may be working on the project? Are there any requirements for security plans? Is there a non-disclosure agreement included? Do you need to deliver a prototype? Does work need foreign travel or shipment of research results? And is there any statement that proprietary or export controlled information will be provided? Some examples which can serve as a red flag. For instance, your customer has ordered an unusual equipment or reagents. It is an example of red flag. Red flag means something is not quite right. If your customer from a biotech company or academic institution is asking to deliver biological material or equipment at unusual destination, then it's a red flag. If your customer is making unusual requests for power requirements for the equipment to be purchased, and it's different from those at the shipping destination, so it's a red flag. If your customer is willing to pay cash for a very expensive equipment or item, when the term of sale would normally call for financing, but customer wants to pay the whole amount in cash, it's a red flag. If customer has a little or no business background, but want to purchase biological materials or equipment, it's a red flag. Customers don't need routine installation, training, or maintenance services, means something is not quite right. In addition, for example, if a freight forwarding firm is listed as the product's final destination, then it's a clear case of red flag. Please have a look at other examples. Those are stated on this slide and previous slide. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize, I want to highlight 3 points. Point number 1, organizations and companies need to implement know your customer and due diligence practices meticulously to make sure that biological materials and equipment will be protected. Point number 2, organizations and companies need to make sure that staff is skillful and competent enough to handle customers, logistic operators, and our service providers to minimize the risks in all. And point number 3 is organizations and companies need to protect dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge to reduce the biosecurity risks at local, national, regional, and global levels. Okay, in this module, you have learned the role of organizations and companies in preventing the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. In the next module, you will see some examples of sanction regimes against the revisionist proliferator states, organizations, and companies. Thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you during the next module. Until then, take care and stay safe.